Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a bit different. It's gonna be me thinking through about what the future of the channel is and whether or not it's the best use of my resources, and if it is, what I want to do moving forward. And there's been a lot of things that have motivated this. One is, of course, there's a couple of videos that I did that are not doing very well. That happens. It's just as much on me as anything else. Trying to do something different doesn't work. And so I've just been thinking about where I want to go in general with all of this. And really what it is that it's like, why am I making the content? Should I continue to do it? And then, or should I move on to do some other things, in other pursuits? And there's a lot of factors at play here. I know this probably isn't very interesting to a lot of people, but there's also going to be a lot of background on where I came from and why I ended up where I am. So if that is of interest to you, then I promise to try to be brief. And if not, then of course, I might see you in another video. So the first thing is that I have the personal issues that I kind of have discussed and kind of pointed at is that I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2010. And so I'm not going to be able to work part time or full time. The reason I did videos is that when I have 1 or 2 hours where I do have some of the energy, I can put together a video in a fairly basic way. I can be a voice with some PowerPoint slides, and I can put that together fairly quickly. And so that's why I was kind of doing it. And I have a lot of free time, it seems like, but I really actually don't have a lot of time to do a lot of things. Um, Having a lot of free time, not being able to, not having to work, is a great thing when it's a choice. When you're at a certain life, a certain part of life where you can retire or whatever. That's great. When it's a necessity that you cannot spend that time, that you have to do other things like rest and take care of your health, it's not so great. Um, the other thing that plays into this, though, is that I've been coding for 40 plus years. I started in Atari 400 and just kept going ever since. I remember being a kid when I was 8 or 9, maybe a little bit older than that, maybe in middle school. But I was on television with a special news report about a computing convention that was going on. There's a bunch of Amiga and Atari guys, not a lot of PC people there. Some Apple folks, I think. But just this kid talking about all this great stuff that was happening in terms of these new 16-bit computers that everybody was using. The 68,000s, and had my Atari 1040 ST there doing some stuff on. Remember someone demoing a multiplayer maze game using MIDI. So crazy things like that. Um, when I was in junior high and high school especially, I did of course my AP in computer science. I was very lucky I could do that. Um, Also, the University of Utah had a program for people that were really interested in doing more on computers to come into the labs and be able to work in that environment and do some things. And so I was able to use the HP and Sun workstations there. And of course, that ended up me going to get my bachelor's in computer science from the University of Utah. I also then worked on my master's. After I got my master's, I left to go off to Silicon Valley. I started off at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, but quickly ended up at HP Labs. And I was thinking that was going to be where I was going to work for the next 25 or 30 years, like the some of the colleagues I'd worked with. Um, One of the people I had worked on my master's thesis on, Martin Griss, has been there was at HP Labs for a very long time, and I was able to work on UML 2.0 as the HP technical representative for a while. But unfortunately, when the dot-com crash happened, and HP had a massive layoff, I was one of those 17,000 people that was laid off from the combined company HP and Compaq, and I ended up going back to school to get my PhD and just do various part-time jobs to keep me, keep the bills being paid. And it was when I was working on finishing my doctorate, doing a postdoc in medical informatics, that I realized, basically I realized that actually I was not feeling very well, was having a very hard time working. And that's when I got diagnosed with MS and I started to get treated. And so the idea that I had to get tenure and become a tenured professor went out the window, and it ended up doing contracting or programming jobs as long as I could until I just could no longer able to do that. Basically, what happened is my eyesight kind of went sideways, and it turns out I just had a case of very severe dry eye, which I still deal with to this day. But I have specialized contacts that I can wear that can help me do things. But I can't use a computer for an extended amount of time for the same reason, and so there's all these issues that kind of came to a head that I can't really do what I needed to do, had been doing for a very, very long time. So part of that ended up being that I thought about making some content on code, but getting invasion is very difficult. It opens up to some criticism, and it takes notable time and resources to do it well. And that's the thing is you have to invest in it. The content creators that do well, and even a lot of content creators that don't do well, have invested in making a good product overall in terms of visuals and audio and all that kind of stuff. So that takes time and that takes resources to do well. And in my case, there's very limited. So I decided to do kind of the, disembodied voice behind a text editor thing. And I still kind of like that. And I feel the most comfortable doing that kind of thing because investing in cameras and doing all those types of things and more advanced editing is just time that I don't have. So the idea behind this was, though, despite all those efforts and this content not being necessarily the most striking, I was hoping to make up with it in terms of information density, and maybe have a small but steady income, steady source of additional income, from ads and things like that. But more importantly, to try to use my education in a way that was beneficial and have a bit of sense of purpose. And for a while, that was working. But the current situation is that the content I like doing doesn't do very well, to be perfectly honest. Um, and all those goals seem completely out of reach for the time being. And to be blunt, a lot of it is that AI is just drowning out a lot of the stuff that's in this area. It's impossible for someone to come in and try to get traction when literally anything that is of any interest to any community will literally just be spammed by, just AI slop. And not only that, but to be perfectly blunt, there's a lot of people out there that in the coding community that are not interested in learning anything about being a better programmer or anything like that. They just want to basically get a job, and that I completely support that, right? They just want to do their work and not do anything about it. And frankly, there's a lot of people out there that just want to be, basically, why learn when you can vibe? They really want to be able to do the AI thing and try to ride that wave, um, that bubble, and before it pops. And I just have no interest in doing that. Um, Even though one of the things I'll point out is that I have no problem understanding how large language models work, thanks to some great content on the YouTube and doing some research. It's statistical prediction with incredibly advanced models, but that's all it is. It's one of those things where it's flipping an amazing amount of coins in just the right way. And that has no interest to me because it's a non-deterministic, and I haven't seen the value that it provides to people in any way whatsoever. It's one of those things where there's a reason you learn. There's a reason plagiarism is a problem in college. It's not just a matter of ethics, but you cannot learn by just echoing other people's work. It is impossible. And so we'll see. I mean, it could be one of those things where, there's a lot of people out there that want to wedge it into every part of our economy. And that could be, one of those things where we might just end up with this yet another transformation that we're having to deal with, like the dot-com days. I'm more hopeful that basically it is a bubble that's going to mostly pop, and then there'll be some very small but more useful cases of it in, how we use it as programmers and how other people use it. But for now, it's just kind of exhausting to deal with. And so that's been kind of disheartening. Why continue to make content on this when, you're just getting lost in a sea of just slop. There's other options here is that one of the things about it is that I could just work with the Racket team directly. A lot of the content I've done here is on the Racket programming language. One of the people that is one of the main main developers on that team and one of the main people behind that whole racket project was one of my PhD advisors who was at the University of Utah. So I have worked with him. So it's very much an option that I could take the few hours I have and make some small contributions to the project and engage with people there. I also could pursue some other options just personally, like music, even though I have no um, illusions whatsoever about that being difficult to get into. That making code about content is hard. Making music and getting any traction with it whatsoever is just nigh impossible. Or, as they put it in the HDH world, find another squirrel, find something else. Finally, what's feeding into this is that overall, the mental health, you know, I have my struggles obviously with mental health, as all people with chronic illnesses do. But right now, the coding community is not in a good place right now. There's still a lot of toxic behavior, but there's also just an increasing amount of worry and hopelessness. And it's just not very good to engage with. And even academics is no safe haven. So, there's no place for people to go to ride out the storm. And I'm wondering, is trying to continue to engage with all this worth all the risks? And so I've done a lot of thinking about it. And what I've decided is that what I'm going to do now is that I'm not going to just close down the channel. I'm just going to focus on making the videos about Racket and other content and programming languages as best I can. Put them out there, maybe less frequently, and I'm just going to still be a voice behind a text editor, not try to do anything more than that, and see where that goes. And in sometime next year, really reevaluate where I'm at, and if it's in a better place, that's great. And if it's not really going anywhere, then I will ultimately decide to move on to something else. So, if you made it this far, again, thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I do hope to see you in the next video.